I'm Justin Lin, and I run a program in Brooklyn called BKC. We provide education, programming, events, and all kinds of community-oriented activities for photographers here in New York. Well, I used the lens to shoot a video spot for my friend Omanesia. She's a musician, and we wanted to do a little Instagram video, see what happens when we use the lens under some challenging conditions. So I thought it'd be nice to experiment with lens flare, see how that responded on the lens, as well as different types of out-of-focus techniques. Just playing around, having fun. Yeah. My first impression of the new Petzval lens was, first of all, that it was beautiful and kind of a brassy color. So I was really taken aback by how it looked. After that, I touched it and it was quite heavy in the hand, had a very solid, almost weighty focusing and aperture ring. And so I just thought it'd be kind of interesting to shoot some video with it because, you don't get to see that kind of that type of ring resistance for doing focal pulls and also for changing the aperture in the middle of the shot. So that made sense to give that or make that the reason that we would shoot it with video. Well, when I started the experiment, the lighting I was choosing was pretty broad-faced LED lights, and I was facing them towards the camera to create the maximum possible flare results. So it flared up pretty good, and the color and the sort of texture and the size of the flare really shifted according to how I was shifting the different rings of the camera. So both the focus and the aperture rings affected the sort of quality of that flare. And so it became a big tool of what I was trying to play with when we started to mess around with the lens. Well, it's hard to know exactly what to look for in a lens unless you know what project you're using it for. There are lenses that are good for a lot of different purposes, that are very sharp, clear, low distortion, good color. And everyone needs some type of lens like that at some point. But other lenses, I think, are great because they bring a specific character to what you're trying to shoot, or maybe they operate in a different way than you're used to, and so it brings a new type of workflow to the whole situation. One of these things is that you don't have autofocus, so you're sort of, playing with the idea of focus throughout the shot. That comes with its pros and cons, obviously. I think I would need to definitely spend more time with it if I was going to get to have very sharp focus in each shot. But I think the experimentation is what really makes it more fun. And not to mention that it feels different in the hand and it has a sort of unique weight to it. So I was very into the whole process. I always like to experiment with interesting bits of gear and see what happens. So the Petzval lens has a very unique quality to the way it achieves foreground, background, and focus. And I think for that reason, you can really, and especially the sort of lighting test I did today, the way that it responds to different light means that it could be a really interesting player in night photography, both on the street, where you're dealing with cars and lights from different buildings and shadows that are going all over the place, and also with astrophotography or long exposure. I'm just curious to see what it does, and so for that reason I think, if I'm going to go out and do this type of work, I'd want to probably pack something that does something completely crazy perhaps. So, that's where I'd like to go right off the bat, but I think, I was thinking maybe portraits could be fun too, just by the way it distorts the background. Maybe next time I'll try something a little bit more conventional. So the prototype version of this lens doesn't have the aperture mark, so it was actually pretty kind of play it by ear in terms of where the aperture was actually set at. But for the most part, I liked how smooth it felt shifting from one aperture to another, especially in a video context. That made it, very interesting as opposed to steppy and awkward. So much more seductive. And I can imagine that in a darkened space, or if you're shooting outdoors at night, if you're shooting in a low light scenario, that extra stop or two of aperture is really going to help out. So I don't tend to shoot wide open a lot though, personally. So I guess for other photographers, perhaps. Oh, I love an 80-ish millimeter lens. I really do. I think that they have a very wonderful way of capturing the body, particularly faces, but also parts of faces, details. I don't really have the length of room to do a full body in this room, especially not with the horizontal frame, but I think that as far as capturing Omanasia, her facial features, the sort of amazing shape of her hair, all these things really, I love that focal length. And yeah, I use it a lot in portrait photography, which is where I spent most of my early career taking pictures of people, and I loved getting around that 70 to 85 range. Well, I'm a big fan of in-camera effects, so lens effects, things that you do to lenses, things that you do, putting things in front of lenses, and all these different aspects of using optics as opposed to digital mediums to capture unusual sights and images. So I think that any way that people are going to try to use it is going to be fun, as opposed to trying to replicate something that's like super sharp and hyper clear and with this particular type of bokeh. I don't think there's really a need to have one most pleasing style. And I think the more you see different lens manufacturers, or even just like things like what you guys are doing, to change the game up and give us different kinds of options, I think people are going to gravitate towards that. So whatever it is that the lens has, both kind of pros and cons or for and against it, I think some people are going to really love it for that reason, and some people won't. And I think that's just the way it is. The flares look awesome, and what I liked about it was that it created a little bit of a spotlight or a central motif that I thought maybe I could use in this video shoot, but we'll see. It depends on if it matches well with other stuff. But I liked it. I thought that the lens was, had something inspiring all of its own, and if I had a chance to try it out with different types of lights and, especially both indoor and outdoor, I think that would be really fun.